Leave before cops. The shout cracked through the restaurant like a glass shattering on marble. Forks froze mid-air. Conversations died. Every head in the chandelier-lit dining room turned toward one table, toward one man. The waiter, chest puffed, finger stabbing the air, wasn't whispering. He wanted the whole room to hear. "You don't belong here." His voice carried the certainty of someone who thought authority lived in his vest and name tag. Across from him, the black man in the tailored blue suit didn't flinch. He didn't even shift his arms, still folded calm across his chest. The storm outside was loud, but the storm inside him was silent, measured. A woman in a cream blazer, the floor manager, crossed her arms like a judge ready to deliver a sentence. Behind them, a security guard stepped closer, eyes scanning, waiting for a signal. And in the corner, a young diner raised his phone, red light blinking, capturing every word. The room held its breath. Some guests leaned forward, curious. Others sat back, uncomfortable, as if injustice was too loud to ignore, yet too familiar to challenge. The waiter leaned closer, his voice dripping with disdain. "We don't serve your kind here, so either walk out now, or I'll make the call." And still silence from the man in the blue suit. He didn't rise. He didn't beg. His calm pressed heavier on the air than the waiter's rage ever could. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to him. The silence broke not with his words, but with whispers from the tables. "Is he serious?" one woman muttered. "This feels wrong," another said, clutching her glass tighter. The young man with the phone shook his head, eyes wide, already typing, "This is happening live." The waiter jabbed his finger again, louder now, desperate to force humiliation into existence. "Out, now, before you regret it." But the man in the blue suit only breathed, slow and steady. His stillness wasn't weakness, it was gravity, and everyone in that room was about to feel its pull. He hadn't come here as a king. He had walked in like any other diner. No entourage, no whispered greetings from the maître d', just a man in a blue suit, crisp but understated, choosing to take his seat without fanfare. His name? Not yet. To them, he was only another face in the crowd, someone to measure, someone to dismiss. And they measured wrong. The restaurant glittered with chandeliers and polished cutlery, every detail designed to whisper prestige. But prestige can't hide prejudice. In rooms like this, appearance is treated like currency, and tonight he was undercharged. He didn't wear a Rolex. His tie wasn't splashed with gold. He ordered water first, not wine. And in that quiet choice, the staff decided he didn't belong. What they didn't know, the lease on this building bore his signature. The payroll checks bore his authority. Every plate, every chair, every glass of crystal acquired through his vision, his risk, his persistence. This restaurant didn't just serve his guests. It existed because of him, but he wanted to see how it operated when the owner wasn't obvious. It was a test, silent but sharp. And within minutes, the test was already failing. As the waiter's finger hovered inches from his face, the man remembered another dining room, years ago. 24, hungry after his first business pitch, sitting in a booth with second-hand shoes on his feet. He'd been ignored for nearly an hour while other customers, lighter-skinned and louder, were served immediately. That night, he ate nothing. But he left with something stronger resolve. Resolve that one day, no one could tell him he didn't belong at a table. Now, decades later, the insult had matured but not disappeared. Leave before the cops. Same melody, different verse. Around him, diners whispered into their glasses, half curious, half afraid. The phone camera in the corner glowed red, capturing every angle. And still, he sat motionless. His calm wasn't ignorance. It was intention. He understood what silence could do, how it unsettled aggressors, how it magnified injustice. The waiter's anger sounded loud, but his stillness sounded louder. He adjusted his cuff slightly, the only movement he allowed. The silk caught the light, subtle, deliberate. A reminder. Wealth doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. The manager shifted her weight, arms still crossed, eyes narrowing as if rehearsing the words she'd say when the police arrived. The guard beside her straightened, expecting an order, and the young man filming tightened his grip on the phone, whispering, "This is bigger than dinner. This is proof." The blue-suited man glanced at none of them. His gaze rested on the tablecloth, pure white, unstained, as if daring the moment to mark it. He didn't rush. He didn't plead. He knew time was his ally, because the longer he sat, the closer the truth would come, whether they were ready for it or not. The waiter leaned in, his smirk sharp enough to cut glass. Men like you don't order steak here. You steal tips. You skip checks. This place isn't for you. His words dropped like stones into the quiet room, sending ripples across polished tables. Gasps flickered from nearby diners. A woman in pearls raised her brows, whispering to her partner. A father at the far booth shifted uncomfortably, his toddler tugging at his sleeve. The insult wasn't subtle, it was theater. The man in the blue suit remained still, his hands folded, eyes lowered to the tablecloth. His silence was heavier than the chandelier above, a weight pressing down on everyone listening. The manager stepped forward now, voice clipped. "Sir, you're disturbing our guests. Either leave quietly or security will remove you." She didn't look at him as a customer. She looked at him like a trespasser. At the corner table, the young man with the phone mouthed to his friend. "Did she just say disturbing?" He kept recording. The red light burned brighter, like truth itself was impatient. The guard shifted closer, shoes thudding against hardwood. He didn't touch him yet, but the message was clear. Any second now. And still, no reaction, no argument, just calm. The waiter laughed under his breath, cruel and confident. "Maybe you got lost. Fast. Food's down the street. Cheaper meals for cheaper men." He slapped the table once, loud, trying to jar him into anger, but anger didn't come. The diners were split, half complicit in silence, half watching with unease. One whispered, "It's just policy." Another shot back, "Policy doesn't sound like that." The room wasn't united anymore. It was cracking. The man in blue adjusted only one thing, his breathing, slow, steady, as though each inhale anchored him deeper into the chair. The kind of calm that isn't weakness, it's preparation. And then, a small voice broke from the back. A teenage girl, seated with her mother, muttered just loud enough, "He hasn't done anything." Her mother shushed her, but the words hung in the air, undeniable. The waiter stiffened, embarrassed that silence wasn't enough, that witnesses were finding their voices. He barked again, harsher this time. "Last warning. Stand up and walk out. Don't make me repeat myself." "Oh." The manager crossed her arms tighter, signaling the guard with her eyes. Guests clutched their drinks. The phone camera caught it all, the anger, the fear, the test unraveling in real time. But the man in the blue suit, he only blinked once. And in that blink lived years of memory, hotel lobbies, airport gates, dealership counters each time told he didn't belong, each time fueling this moment. He didn't need to move yet, because the louder they became, the closer they came to exposing themselves. The room braced itself for an explosion. The waiter's insults had been sharp, the manager's tone colder still, and the guard loomed like a shadow ready to strike. Everyone expected a fight, but the man in the blue suit gave them nothing. He sat anchored, spine straight, hands folded loosely on the table as if he were listening to a lecture instead of being humiliated. His silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. It unsettled them more than shouting ever could. The waiter snapped his fingers beside his ear, mocking, "Did you hear me? Or are you too slow to understand plain English?" His voice rose, desperate for dominance. But the man didn't flinch. He exhaled once, slow, steady, the kind of breath that fills a room without a word. Some diners mistook it for arrogance. Others recognized something else, control. True control, the kind that doesn't need to raise its voice to shift the balance. The manager leaned over, lips tight. "Sir, your behavior is unacceptable. You've disrupted service long enough. If you don't stand, security will assist you." The guard adjusted his stance, inching closer. The threat was clear, but still the man in blue didn't move. He raised his eyes at last, not to argue, but to look at the waiter directly. A calm, steady gaze. No fire, no fury, just clarity. The kind of look that makes a man question his own authority. The waiter faltered for half a second, then covered it with a sneer. "That stare won't save you. Not here." Across the room, the young man filming whispered to his camera, "He hasn't said a word. Not one. And look at them losing it." His friend nodded, eyes wide. The silence stretched, long, uncomfortable. It wasn't passive, it was pressure. It forced the aggressors to keep speaking, to dig deeper into their own cruelty. The man remembered another silence, long ago. Age 26, denied a loan at a bank despite triple collateral. He had sat there the same way, quiet, watching the officer stumble over excuses. He had learned then, silence is a mirror. It reflects the truth louder than protest. Back in the restaurant, the mirror was working. The waiter's voice cracked as he shouted again. The manager's words grew harsher. The guard's jaw clenched, unsure, and guests whispered louder, torn between complicity and conscience. Still, he didn't speak. He didn't need to. His restraint turned the dining room into a stage, and every prejudice was writing its own script in real time. And when he finally chose to break the silence, he knew the room would never be the same. At first, the room was complicit. Forks lowered, glasses half raised, everyone pretending they hadn't heard the words spill like venom from the waiter's mouth. Easier to sip, to look away. But silence doesn't last forever. Not when injustice stands in the center of a chandelier dining hall. In the corner, the young man with the phone lifted it higher. The red light blinked like a pulse. "People need to see this," he whispered, voice trembling but determined. His friend leaned closer, whispering back, "Careful, they'll throw you out too." He didn't care. The recording continued. Every insult, every sneer, every second of the man in blue refusing to rise. At another table, a middle-aged woman clutched her pearls and muttered to her husband, "This is indecent." But he only shrugged, eyes darting toward the waiter, unwilling to intervene. A teenage girl, seated with her mother near the window, couldn't hold back. "He hasn't even spoken," she said louder this time. "Why are they treating him like this?" Her mother hushed her quickly, but too late the words rippled through the air. The waiter turned sharply. "Mind your own business." His voice cracked against the girl like a whip. The diners gasped, the camera caught it, and the room's tension thickened into something undeniable. From the back, another guest, a man in his 40s, wearing a gray sweater, called out, "She's right, he hasn't done anything." He didn't stand, but his voice carried weight. A few heads nodded, whispers shifting from gossip to solidarity. The manager's jaw tightened. She shot the guard a look, "Handle this." But the guard hesitated, scanning the room. Too many phones, too many eyes. The man in the blue suit still hadn't moved. His calm pressed harder with every second, drawing the witnesses in. What started as curiosity was becoming conviction. The young man with the phone spoke louder now, addressing no one and everyone. "This isn't service, this is humiliation." His friend tugged at his sleeve, but he didn't stop. The video rolled. Capturing the moment, a crowd began to fracture. And for the first time, the waiter's confidence wavered. Not because the man in blue spoke he hadn't, but because strangers were starting to speak for him. The silence wasn't his alone anymore. It was theirs. It was becoming collective. The restaurant no longer hummed with quiet luxury. It buzzed with tension, with outrage building just under the surface, a storm waiting to break. And at the center of it all, the man in the blue suit sat steady, eyes fixed, hands folded, as if he'd been here before, as if he knew the shift was only beginning. The manager finally stepped forward, heels clicking against hardwood like a countdown, her arms still crossed, her voice sharp enough to cut the air. "Sir, this charade ends now. You are not a guest of this establishment. You are disrupting service. You will leave immediately by choice or by force." The dining room froze. Her words weren't suggestion. They were a sentence. The man in the blue suit didn't move. He lifted his gaze just enough to meet hers. Calm, unshaken. That calm unsettled her more than any outburst could have. The waiter smirked, emboldened. "Told you. He's nobody. Probably walked in off the street hoping for a free meal." A ripple of discomfort passed through the guests. Some shook their heads. Others pressed phones tighter in their palms, documenting. The teenage girl near the window whispered, "Why won't they even check his reservation?" Her mother frowned, torn between fear and agreement. The manager ignored them all. She gestured to the guard. "Escort him out." The guard shifted forward, shoulders squared. His hand hovered near the man's chair, but hesitation lingered in his eyes. Too many witnesses, too much recording. Still, he leaned in, waiting for the man to resist. The man in blue didn't resist. He didn't even blink. The manager's voice rose, sharp and public. "You're a fraud. You don't belong here. And if you refuse to leave, we will call the police." That word fraud hung heavy in the chandelier light. Guests murmured, some shocked, some disgusted. The young man with the camera spoke louder this time. "You haven't even checked his name. You're assuming." "Mind your business," the manager snapped. but her voice cracked. The waiter laughed harshly. Come on, it's obvious. Look at him. No one dressed like that belongs here. The irony stung. A tailored suit, polished shoes, understated elegance, and yet to them, it wasn't enough. The man in blue inhaled slowly, exhaled slower. Still silence, still control. The diners shifted uncomfortably, tension building like a storm under glass. One older woman whispered, "This is disgraceful." Another guest tapped a message into his phone. "Live at the restaurant. They're humiliating a man for existing." Ugh. The guard leaned closer, waiting for the order to push him out. The manager nodded, lips pressed thin. And just like that, the line had been crossed. This was no longer suspicion. It was open hostility. The dining hall was no longer just a room of food and wine. It had become a courtroom, and the verdict had already been spoken. Guilty of belonging nowhere. But the man in the blue suit knew something the rest of them didn't. This trial wasn't over, and the verdict they thought they'd delivered would soon turn back on them. The manager's patience snapped. Her voice cracked like a gavel. "Call the police. Now." The waiter didn't hesitate. He snatched the landline from the host's stand and dialed with the zeal of a man convinced righteousness was on his side. "Yes, we have a trespasser. Aggressive. Refusing to leave." His eyes cut toward the man in the blue suit as he added the lie. "Could be dangerous." Gasps rippled through the dining room. Dangerous? He hadn't moved a muscle. The guard stepped closer, hand brushing the back of the chair. His presence loomed, a silent threat ready to be physical. The wooden leg of the chair scraped softly against the floor, pushed not by the man in blue but by the guard's knee. The sound carried like a siren through the hushed restaurant. The waiter slammed the phone back onto its cradle, chest heaving. "They're on their way," he declared loudly, almost triumphantly. The teenage girl at the window shot up from her seat. "He didn't do anything." Her mother grabbed her wrist, but the words had already landed. The young man filming muttered into his mic, "They're calling cops on a silent man. This is unreal." His friend leaned forward, whispering, "Keep recording. Don't stop." The manager leaned in, close enough for only the front tables to hear, but loud enough for her venom to spread. "If you had any dignity, you'd leave before they arrive. Don't make this harder." Still, the man in the blue suit didn't move. His stillness was thunder before the strike. The waiter, desperate for dominance, shoved the edge of the table with his hip. The silverware rattled, glasses clinked, a knife nearly slid to the floor. Gasps erupted again. One woman pressed her hand to her chest. "Get up," the waiter barked, his voice rising, no longer professional, no longer restrained. "Or I'll drag you out myself." The guard's hand hovered over the man's shoulder, but he stopped short. Too many phones, too many witnesses. His eyes flicked nervously at the blinking red lights across the room. The silence from the man in blue grew unbearable. He was no longer just a customer, they had turned him into a spectacle, and in their frenzy, they hadn't noticed the crowd shifting. Diners no longer just whispered. Some muttered openly, "This isn't right. They're going too far. He's done nothing." The waiter slammed his palm flat against the table, rattling the crystal water glass. "You hear me? Out!" And yet, the man in the blue suit sat rooted, calm, unyielding. His silence didn't collapse under their noise. It sharpened. It became the blade that would cut the room in two. The room throbbed with tension. The waiter's chest heaved. The manager's lips pressed thin. The guard hovered, itching for contact but frozen by the glow of phone cameras. And then movement. The man in the blue suit reached slowly into his jacket. The guard tensed. The manager stiffened. A murmur swept the tables. But all he pulled out was a phone. Sleek, black, silent authority in his palm. He tapped once. A name lit the screen. "Rachel," he said, voice calm but deliberate. The dining room stilled. It was the first word he'd spoken all night. On the other end, the reply came crisp, professional, immediate. "I'm here." "They've escalated," he said evenly, eyes still fixed on the trembling water glass before him. "Activate protocol." "Yes, sir. Initiating now." The words weren't loud, but they carried, and the diners leaned closer, drawn in by the quiet power threading through every syllable. The manager scoffed, masking unease with disdain. "Calling your friend won't save you. This isn't a game." But the man didn't look at her. He spoke into the phone, steady as stone. "Rachel, log the time, 7:42 p.m. Note the language, fraud, trespasser, dangerous, And the call to the police. Logged and confirmed, Rachel replied. Do you want me to notify compliance? Yes. Begin full audit on tonight's staff. Gasps erupted from the nearby tables. Compliance? Audit? The words rang corporate, heavy with consequence. The waiter laughed nervously. What is this? You think you're somebody important? The man in blue raised his eyes for the first time in minutes. His gaze pinned the waiter where he stood. Calm, cold, cutting. Rachel, he continued, flag the waiter's conduct, escalate to human resources, and make sure every word is recorded. Already done, came the efficient reply. The room shifted. Guests whispered. Phones tilted higher, capturing not just humiliation now, but a strange reversal, an unseen power stretching its limb. The manager snapped, louder than before, desperate to reclaim authority. This is nonsense. Security, remove him. But the guard hesitated again. His eyes darted between the man in blue, the phones, and the trembling manager. His hand didn't move. The man in the blue suit closed his phone slowly, deliberately, as if time itself bent to his pace. He folded his hands once more, calm as ever. He didn't need to shout. He didn't need to stand. His first move had been made. The system was already awake. And though the waiter smirked, though the manager barked, though the police were on their way, none of them realized yet. The ground beneath their feet had already shifted. The phones were still raised. The waiter still smirked. The manager still barked orders. No one followed. The guard still lingered, caught between duty and doubt. And then he moved. The man in the blue suit rose slowly from his chair. Not rushed, not reactive, deliberate. Each inch of his posture pulled the air tighter. Conversations died, mid-breath. Even the clink of a fork halted mid-table. He adjusted his cuff once more, as if to remind the room that composure is the sharpest blade. His eyes swept across the dining hall, not defiant, but sovereign. You want to know who I am? His voice wasn't loud, but it carried like thunder beneath velvet. The waiter scoffed. Yeah, who are you supposed to be? The man's gaze cut straight through him. I am the owner of this restaurant. Silence, heavy, crushing. A glass slipped from a diner's hand, shattering against the floor. Gasps rose in waves, disbelief colliding with recognition. The young man with the phone whispered, "Oh my God, he owns it." The manager's face drained of color. That's not possible, she muttered, shaking her head. You're lying. Ugh. But the man in blue continued, calm as stone. My name is Marcus Hale, CEO of Hale Hospitality Group. Every chair, every glass, every paycheck in this building runs through me. The waiter's smirk faltered. His lips parted, but no sound came. I sat here tonight, Marcus continued, to see how my staff treats people when they think no one is watching. And now, everyone is watching. The phones caught it all his words, their faces, the truth unraveling in real time. The guard lowered his hand, stepping back. No more hesitation, just quiet resignation. The manager stammered, You can't prove that." Marcus pulled his phone again, tapped once, and held it up. A contract filled the screen company letterhead, signatures, ownership line clear as day. I don't need to prove anything, but I will. And when I do, your careers here will end. The dining room buzzed with whispers, phones buzzing with notifications as live streams exploded online. Some diners clapped softly, others shook their heads in awe. Marcus lowered the phone. His gaze swept across the room once more, settling on the waiter. You called me a fraud. You called me dangerous. In the house I built. He let the words hang, sharp as a blade. Tell me who's the fraud now. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was judgment, and it belonged to him. For a breathless moment, no one moved. The chandelier light seemed to hang heavier, like even it was listening. Then the shift began. A man in a gray sweater stood first, voice steady. He's telling the truth. I've seen his name in Forbes. His words cracked the ice. The teenage girl near the window chimed in, bold now. I knew it. He didn't do anything wrong. You all did. Her mother pulled her down gently, but the conviction stayed in the air. The young man with the phone turned the camera on himself, eyes blazing. This isn't just a story anymore. This is justice happening live. The stream chat flooded faster than he could read, hearts and fire emojis racing across the screen. The waiter's smirk shattered into panic. He's bluffing. This is some trick, but his voice wavered, betraying him. The manager backed away half a step, color gone from her face. Her arms, once crossed with authority, now wrapped around herself like armor failing. This can't be happening. Marcus stood tall in the center, calm as ever. It is happening, and every second, the world is watching how you treat your own employer. Phones rose higher. Guests began clapping not polite applause, but sharp, deliberate strikes of solidarity. The sound rolled through the dining hall like thunder. The guard lowered his eyes. He stepped back fully now, choosing distance over loyalty to a sinking ship. One diner, an older woman with a floral scarf, pushed her chair back and stood. "I've eaten here for years. Never again if this is how your staff behaves." Others nodded, murmuring agreement, some pulling out their phones to cancel reservations on the spot. The tide had turned. The room was no longer against Marcus. It was against them. The waiter muttered frantically, "I didn't mean it. I was just—" "You meant every word," Marcus cut in, voice sharp but steady. "And now every word is recorded, logged, witnessed." The manager tried one last plea, her voice cracking. "Please, Mr. Hale, it was a mistake." "No," Marcus interrupted, gaze cold. "It was a choice you've made before. But this time it cost you everything." The clapping grew louder. Guests leaned forward. Their support no longer whispered, but shouted. The waiter looked to the manager for rescue. The manager looked to the guard. And the guard? He only shook his head slowly, stepping further back. They were alone now, exposed. Marcus inhaled, letting the weight of the moment settle. The balance of power had shifted completely. The dining room wasn't their courtroom anymore. It was his stage. And justice was about to be served. The clapping faded into silence again. But this silence was different. It wasn't fear. It was anticipation. Every eye fixed on Marcus, waiting to see what he would do next. He didn't rush. He let the weight settle. Then, slowly, he raised his phone once more and pressed a single button. "Rachel," he said, voice calm, even measured. "Yes, sir," came the reply, clear through his earpiece. "Terminate employment for the floor manager on duty and the waiter involved. Immediate removal from the system. Access revoked. Payroll ended tonight." "Yes, sir, executing now." The words struck harder than any shout. The manager staggered back, shaking her head. You can't just—" Her voice collapsed under the realization. Her badge on her waist buzzed, a red light flashing. Locked out. The guard noticed first. The waiter fumbled at the payment tablet near the host stand, desperate to prove control, but the screen flickered and signed him out. A cold system prompt read, "Access denied." Gasps swept the room. Diners leaned in, phones capturing the exact moment authority drained from their faces. Marcus didn't move closer. He didn't need to. "Effective immediately. You no longer work for this restaurant. You no longer represent my brand. And you will never humiliate another guest under my roof again." The manager's hands trembled. She looked at the guard for help, but he only shook his head. "He's the boss," he muttered under his breath. The waiter's voice cracked into a plea. "Please, sir, I didn't mean—" Marcus's eyes cut him down with a glance. "You meant every word, and now you live with them." The young man recording whispered, "He just fired them on the spot." His stream chat exploded. Comments flooding in, some cheering, others stunned, all bearing witness. The older woman with the scarf raised her glass. "That's justice," she said softly, loud enough for others to hear. More clapping followed, stronger this time, no hesitation. The manager's knees nearly buckled. The waiter buried his face in his hands. Around them, guests didn't look away. They watched, they filmed, they remembered. Marcus lowered his phone. His gaze swept the room one final time before resting on the two who had dared to strip him of dignity. His words landed like a gavel. "You thought you had power tonight, but power doesn't come from a uniform or a title. Power comes from truth. And tonight, the truth ended you." The room erupted not in chaos, but in applause. Justice wasn't whispered anymore. It was celebrated. And Marcus stood steady at the center, not as a victim, not as a man begging for respect, but as what he had always been, the one in command. The applause swelled, not frantic, but steady like waves meeting the shore. Diners rose to their feet, some clapping, some simply standing in quiet awe. The manager and the waiter stood frozen, stripped of every ounce of borrowed authority. Marcus didn't bask in the moment. He let the sound wash over him, but his eyes were calm, his presence measured. He hadn't come for applause. He had come for clarity. When the room quieted, he spoke not loud, but with a gravity that carried to every corner. I didn't need to raise my voice tonight. I didn't need to fight. The truth fought for me, and the truth will always win. His gaze moved across the diners, from the young girl who had dared to speak, to the man in gray who had confirmed his name, to the silent witnesses who now understood. You all saw what happened here. Dignity isn't granted by a uniform. Respect isn't handed out with a menu. And power, he paused, the chandelier light catching his cuff as he lifted his hand slightly. Power is not about who shouts the loudest. It's about who can stand in silence and let the truth reveal itself. Phones captured every word, live streams lit up with comments, chills. That's real strength. History in real time. Marcus turned back to the manager and waiter one final time. You tried to erase me in my own house, but I don't need to go viral to prove who I am. I am the result of every clip like this. I am the final frame. The words landed like a closing curtain. He reached for his jacket, adjusted it once, and began walking toward the exit. No police, no argument, just a man leaving his own restaurant, taller than he had entered. The diners parted for him, some patting his shoulder, some whispering thanks, some simply nodding in respect. The teenage girl whispered to her mother, "That's what real power looks like." At the door, Marcus paused, turning back for one last sentence. His voice dropped low, but carried like a final chord in a symphony. Justice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just stands, unshaken, until the world has no choice but to listen. Then he stepped out, leaving behind a room forever changed where silence had spoken louder than hate, and dignity had written the ending.